this is Christina Barr, and you're watching Black Tea News. Hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about this post that Mike Winger, he is I don't know if he's a pastor, but he's a, preacher. He has a pretty big account on YouTube, Bible thinker, teaching people how to think biblically. But he posed a question to people like, what kind of policies do you think are biblical that we should enact, like politically or whatever? That are biblically backed or whatever. And so this critical Bible scholar, Dan McKellen, retweeted his post and made it very racial and went to identity politics. And I want to talk about that because it's so silly how the left will always want to pin different things on white evangelicals or white males or et cetera, when it's a broad sort of opinion that a lot of people will have. So this was a very good example over the weekend. And, and it's so funny because the things that he listed were things that definitely Black and Hispanic voters, particularly Christian voters, agree with. So I'm not saying all of them or whatever, but just to pin things you don't like policy wise on white evangelicals isn't right. Also, Iran attacked Israel, an unprecedented attack, and 99% of everything was shot down. Or actually, a lot of it didn't apparently even make it off. Kind of failed to hit their targets anyway. But it's a pretty big deal. We'll see how Israel responds because the U.S. it doesn't want them to respond. Apparently, there's all kinds of shady stuff going behind the scenes. So we'll touch on a bit of that today. Also want to show this take about abortion that Bill Maher had, which was very interesting because he's very blunt about his opinion on it, which is the honest take that a lot of people think is kind of too harsh. And which they even told him, like, man, that's harsh. Like on the panel, because Piers Morgan was on the panel and someone else. But was he wrong that is the pro-choice position, basically? So we'll talk about those things today. But before we jump into it, I want to, first of all, hope you guys had a happy weekend, productive weekend, and you got your taxes all in order because today's the day. Today's the day. It's so funny hearing people like, I want my student's loan canceled. Well, I'd like to not pay taxes. So like that's what I think people would really, really like, to not have to fool with that. But but anyway, I hope you guys got that in order because otherwise, Uncle Sam will be beckoning. So hello to the chat. I see people in the chat. Thank you for thank you, Red. I appreciate the compliments. Blessings to you, Meg. I see Bethany. Hope you or Bethan. Got someone from Scotland watching. Hello there. I know this is like a global sort of thing, but it's interesting how many people are interested in American politics so much. But thank you for tuning in. This should be an interesting show. If you like what I do here, please consider going to the website, blacktnews.com, and check out different articles and videos we have on the website. If you like what I do here, you can leave a donation on the site. So you can go to the donate page. It does cost a stream room, a website, all that stuff. Otherwise, you guys can send stars if you're watching on Facebook. And if you're watching on YouTube, you guys can send super chats as well. Also, you guys can check out different merch that we have available at the store, different t-shirts and mugs and so on. That also supports. We got this pro-life uh, teas, we got mugs, and so on. So just go check out the merch if you're interested. Um, and you guys can also check out some of my books available on Amazon. I have 17 that are published. Two are nonfiction. The rest are fiction. Someone left me I saw had left a nice review. I had with so many people watching. Oh, I didn't mean to click on that, but that's from when we went to the March for Life. Not this year, but last year. Me and my sister. I was looking for my picture with all my books. This one here. I had mentioned that my book, The Color of God's Eyes, was like the American Civil War meets X-Men. And with so many people talking about X-Men 97, I thought that was a good pitch or whatever. So someone was like, I saw this on social media, and it really did remind I was so pulled into the story of Charlotte and stuff. So I was like, yes, the marketing worked. So anyway, you guys can check out my stuff. So anyway, I don't have a meme, so we're going to go right into the content of the day. So at first I want to tackle the story with Mike Winger and the response to it. So let me show you this response before I get to my monologuing about it. Let me just hop right to it. So Mike Winger, he is a so I don't know what all his like backgrounds are as far as his credentials, but he runs a pretty big channel where he teaches people how to think biblically, to have a biblical background in their theology, their worldview, etc., and actually look at the text, the completion of the text, and not just snippet here, snippet there, to really analyze and break it down. I don't always agree with Mike, but there's a lot of great videos, a lot of great content that he's put out that's challenged my thinking on quite a few things. So I like him, and I appreciate his ministry, even though, again, we don't always agree on everything. But this was an interesting post that he put out this weekend that caused a bit of a stir, I would say. So he said, what political commitments do you think Christians are supposed to have? And he said, I'll start. Very strong pro-life / anti-abortion, pro-death penalty, freedom of religion, no state control of religion, and number 4, pro-traditional family and traditional marriage. He said, I do think that these are not just political commitments, but Christian commitments that impact my political views. I hope people will interact in a not already angry fashion. I'm genuinely interested in seeing your responses. So the most interesting responses, I guess, that he pointed out anyway, were people who could not correlate the idea that you could be pro-life / anti-abortion, which pro-life just means that you are against abortion and euthanasia. Most people who mention the phrase are talking about abortion. It's not like a bunch of other policies like childcare, etc. Those things would be nice, but it's about not killing the preborn. And the term it makes a lot of sense, right? Because they're like, hey, once your human life starts, that's where it ought to be protected. It's really that simple. Pro-choice doesn't mean all choices, right? It means the choice to choose to have an abortion. So we understand what these phrases mean. So just to be like, oh, they're pro-life, yet they're pro-death penalty. There's a difference between not killing a preborn child who would be innocent versus someone who has had due process, who's guilty of sin, and sometimes they could screw up. So some people who might like the death penalty in principle, but not so much in application because they don't trust the government. I understand that. But they're guilty. They've shed innocent blood, and they're on death row. They had a trial. They have appeals and all kinds of different stuff, and they are executed. That is very different than a baby that has done no wrong. And some people take issue when you call them innocent because they're like, well, if it's in the womb, it doesn't have any frame of mind to actually be innocent. And that's not necessarily what we mean, guys. It just like If you go rob a bank and you shoot someone in the midst of the robbery and you killed an innocent someone who was, innocent of that situation, who was an innocent bystander, that doesn't mean that they were literally an innocent person, like they were a pristine nice member of society. It could have been a drug dealer, but they were still an innocent bystander, had nothing to do with, you know, your criminal activities. So yeah, yeah, they're innocent, as in they're it's unjust punishment toward that individual. So it's not a complicated concept, yet people were acting like it was a particularly complicated or contradictory concept, and it's really not. Now people were questioning whether the death penalty was biblical, and there's a huge sect of different Christians that don't believe in the death penalty. Believe Catholics, for one, I don't support the death penalty from what I know. But he has a series which he posted in the comments about the death penalty, and he posted it a few years ago, and I watched it the other night. I thought it was pretty compelling. I don't I guess I don't uh there are times I'm definitely like, man, yes, the death penalty is a good thing. I do share the concerns about the application of it. I've heard people talk about the death penalty and they didn't like it because it's just fiscally not effective, because apparently it's very, very expensive when there's people on death row, perhaps because they have to set up so many pills. I don't remember, but I read an article about it some time ago. I'm like, oh, that's really fascinating. We can't even like execute people efficiently in the United States. We're just so bad with our money. Uh, so it didn't make it's funny that people had those sorts of responses, and he, was screenshotting and reposting some people who could not grasp those two. Freedom of religion, I don't know why anyone wouldn't, you know, want the freedom to exercise their religion, but pro-traditional family and traditional marriage, it might trigger some people, but I don't really know how you get a you can make a sort of different argument. Now Mike has a lot of different content on all this stuff. He has several videos on abortion. He has several. He has at least a long one about the death penalty. I think he's answered questions about it. But as far as the pro-traditional family, traditional marriage situation, he has quite a few videos on it, including a 4-part series that basically could tackle just about any kind of objection or that people would raise about it. So, like people's new interpretation of what Paul wrote and other things like that. He really breaks it down. So if you're very curious about it, I recommend taking a couple hours one day. Maybe you're doing a road trip. Maybe you want to space it out. But as far as like a biblical case, you can disagree with his interpretation of the passages, but he's done a lot of work into looking within the scriptures to have this biblical sort of worldview backing. Okay. So he's not just like throwing it out there. He's well studied in it, I'll say. So, what was interesting about a comment from response from Mike was this one from Dan McKellen. Now, Dan is a critical Bible scholar. And he said, but he's super left wing. He's super left wing. So Mike mentioned the death penalty. He mentioned abortion. He mentioned um, traditional marriage. Dan is pro-choice. He actually ran for the Democrat seat in Utah. So Dan is pro-choice. He is anti-death penalty, and he is also pro-gay marriage as well. And I've seen him do videos basically claiming that the Bible's not against homosexual activity, that He's done a lot of videos trying to say that the Bible, you can't make a good case that the Bible is anti-abortion, which I've, many people have gone back and forth with him about it. I clearly disagree with Dan. Um, but he has this tweet here: when you forget the overwhelming majority of Christians in the world are not white evangelical Americans. So I don't know what the heck, how you get Mike's opinions here. Okay? Anti-abortion, pro-death penalty, freedom of religion, pro-traditional family, traditional marriage, and your mind goes, that is a white evangelical American thing. It, I don't understand that. Is there just like a plethora of like gay marriages in the African church that I'm not aware of? But just in the American church, I can tell you that plenty of Black and Hispanic Christians share Mike's views on most of these opinions. I think the most controversial one is probably the death penalty. Not even the abortion one, probably the death penalty. And there's a lot of pro-life people who are for the death penalty, but there's a lot of pro-life people who aren't for the death penalty either. They believe that the government shouldn't take any lives. So that's probably the most controversial one, not the abortion, and definitely not the gay marriage one. Definitely not the gay marriage one. I don't understand. Like, think back to California when they had Prop 8. Who voted down Prop 8? I was so surprised. I'm like, California, they banned gay marriage in California? Oh wow, I guess the country's not supportive as on this issue as you would think. If California can be struck down and made illegal in California of all places, when you look at the demographics of the like exit polling and stuff, majority of Black people did not support gay marriage, and Hispanics did not support gay marriage. And there were some Democrats who crossed over and did not support gay marriage, especially because the campaign to ban it, they put it out that, hey, if gay marriage becomes legal, they're going to teach it in the classrooms. And the pro gay marriage side was like, that's not true. That's not true. Of course, they were absolutely true. It was absolutely true. And now they're teaching that your boy may be a girl, and you're a bad person if you don't just accept that, even if they're like a young child, and teachers will try to hide it from you. So there was a slippery slope, and it's really, really slick. Really slick. But yeah, a lot of Black people's like, no, I'm not cool with that. So this idea that white evangelicals are just, I don't know, the evil ones on this issue, and these normal positions, like, these white evangelical, no. What? So why do people on the left do that? There's another tweet I want to show you guys too. From He replied to a couple different people, but somebody said, uh what does race, nationality, or denomination have to do with this question? That's a fair question. What does that have to do with anything? And Dan said, those commitments are identity markers for white evangelical Americans. And it's literally a white evangelical trying to use those identity markers to engage in boundary maintenance. Bro, I could have written the same tweet. I could have written the exact same tweet. And I'm not a white evangelical. I could have written the same tweet. I know so many Black pastors or other Black Christians who would have written the same tweet. The same one. So this identity politics things with this is so weird. No, why does the left do this? Well, they do have this coalition of the minority groups, and they have this oppression Olympics and hierarchy, and the ones who they dislike the most are like the privileged white evangelicals. That's the pinnacle of privilege in America. Straight white male Christian, blah blah blah. So to take something that they don't like opposition to abortion, opposition to gay marriage and the LGBT stuff, and not even the death, but we don't even debate the death penalty like that. But let's just say those is two issues basically. Opposition, if you have any kind of opposition for that, if they can associate it with whiteness, they can associate it with it being bad. They'll take different policies and positions that they don't like, and they'll try to associate it with some kind of white identity and privilege and so on. So people associate it with those things are bad. Even if, even if brown people totally have the same opinion. And they'll also, ream on the white evangelicals for being political, even though black churches are very political. Very political. I haven't been to a lot of Asian churches. I haven't been to a lot of Hispanic churches, but I've been to a lot of white ones. I've been to a lot of black ones. I've traveled a lot, sang a lot. My dad would travel, minister. My family would minister. We'd sing, and we just been a lot of places. I have a big network of folks, and I can tell you, black churches are very political, whether they're conservative or they're Democrat. Very political. They have events where they'll bring people in to talk about the stuff, or they'll just be spewing stuff from the pulpit. And yes, they are mostly Democrat, sure, but and that's probably why they don't say nothing. It's not a bad thing that they're political. It's not a bad thing when Cory Booker or those people go to black churches and talk about, vote for this person, vote for that person. It's not bad when Fani Willis, I'm sorry, goes to a church and starts spouting off like they're attacking me because they're racist. It's fine if they're political, but it's the white evangelicals who tend to vote conservative. So they're obviously a problem. Now, the Democrats, the black Democrats who are churchgoers, might still have political, like conservative leanings, but they just are used to voting straight party Democrat. My dad had a friend who's a Democrat and a preacher. And man, we went to their church one time, and I don't know why the pastor mentioned that my dad was a Republican, because it was like the spirit was here, and all of a sudden it was like like they just sucked it out of the building as soon as they found out my dad was a Republican. It was so weird. They had to like fight back to get the service on track. It was very strange. It was like killed the whole energy. But they got to an argument because my dad is just like, how can you support the Democrats and they support abortion and all this different stuff? And he agreed that it was wrong, but he still wanted health care. So it's not that all these groups who may be voting Democrat and they're passing this crazy stuff that they agree with those things. It's just that they might be voting for different reasons. For health care, for social security benefits and protections, and make sure that stuff isn't touched. Student loan forgiveness, all these sort of goodies like paid child leave and raising the minimum wage. There, but a lot of social stuff we can agree on. We can really agree on and have common ground with. So pretending that these commitments are identity markers of white evangelicals is silly. It's silly. Democrats don't go to black churches and say, hey, we're going to make sure that we teach that sex education classes has carve outs for homosexual sex. They don't do that. They don't go to these churches and say, hey, we're going to make sure that your daughters are going to race against boys and swim against boys if they say that they're biological, if they say identify as girls. They don't do that. They don't say, hey, if your child believes that they're a boy or girl, that we're going to make sure that they can get hormone. They don't do that. They don't do that. They talk about the goodies. They talk about entitlements and other stuff like that. They do not go out there busting as radical as they are on the social issues. That is not how they campaign in these churches that mostly go out and vote straight party ticket. And the more the white evangelicals go to church, the more they will vote Republican, sure. Because they are probably allowing their faith to inform how they vote. And the black church, I don't know. I don't know why there has to be such a why it's so hard for folks to cross over like that. Because I've gone to churches, because I ran for office once, and they liked me, and then I was like, I am a Republican, and they're like, and I'm just like, you don't like my opponent, and you like me. You liked my campaign, like my platform, all the things that I said. You personally appreciated me and my walk with the Lord, but you're having a really hard time getting over this hump. Having a really hard time getting over this hump. But Hispanic voters, though, they're starting to shift, and you're seeing them shift toward Republicans faster than you are like the black vote. The black vote is pretty like solid with the Democrats still, right? Trump got, a bit more the last time around. I don't know how he's going to do this time around, but you're seeing a shift in the Hispanic vote, and that's because of economic reasons, and also they're not too fond of the social stuff that the Democrats are radical and pushing. They don't like it. And it's not just, Christians either. Like the Muslims in Hamtramck were mad about the LGBT community came out, was mad because they wouldn't allow LGBT flags to be flown, but they wouldn't allow any like random flag to be flown. It had to be the state flag, it had to be the city flag, it had to be the POW flag, and I think two other flags, but they were all like political identifiers, but they weren't. You couldn't have like a BLM flag or a Christian flag or a LGBT flag, and the LGBT community was so mad about it. They were so mad about it, and that Dana Nessel, who's an AG, she ended up coming out to Hamtramck to speak on it and said things like, well, when you're oppressed, basically you can't have neutral policies because they'll hurt folks, and they're begging the Muslims to get on board with them or stay in the lane of the Democrats, because they're like, the Republicans, they don't really like you, and we're okay, but you can back off though of the social stuff because they don't like the kind of stuff that you're doing and the kind of stuff that you're pushing. So I want to show you this video, and I've shown you guys this video before during the it was some time ago though. It was during the runoff when I showed you guys this video. So there's this pastor who in his sermon he talked about Trump and he talked about Herschel Walker. And within the span of 2 minutes of him dissing Trump, dissing Herschel Walker, and uplifting Warnock, he then starts criticizing the hypocrisy of America because they try to push policies that he doesn't like as a Christian. And yet they tell him to shut up about it so he doesn't feel like he really truly has freedom of religion. So I want to show this because I want to just really run this home, guys, that you can still vote for these Democrats and still feel like you don't like these policies and would still be against these policies and still vote against these policies, and you stand against these policies. And And he's not a white guy. He's not a white guy. So we're going to just go ahead and watch this whole 2-minute clip.
And our world is confused. Anytime you have a Negro like Herschel Walker in a runoff with an intelligent man like Pastor Warnock, and Herschel Walker know nothing about politics and nothing, oh God. And yet people will look upon him as his career in NFL as if he can make a difference in Washington. We've got a problem. When people still support a fool who talks about himself being in the same level with God like a Donald Trump, our world is in trouble. It's confused. I couldn't support anybody who have the literary gall to put themselves on the same level with God. That's a great picture of the scriptures when he talked about how hard it is for rich folk to enter into the kingdom. That you're so rich and so foolish that you think you're just as powerful as God. And to have people to support that foolishness, our world is in trouble.
So you heard him say all that stuff about Trump and Herschel Walker. I really, there's a lot of fantastical ideas here about Trump there, but immediately he says this.
People who will stand up on national television and tell church folk that you who stand behind your Christian religion and your Christian faith, get over it because we're supporting same-sex marriages and we're supporting abortions, and get over your religious beliefs. Now, how to show you how hypocritical America is, how can we have the freedom of religion and then you pass a law for abortions and same-sex marriages when it goes against my religion? How can I have a right when you're making what I'm saying is wrong legal, and then tell me to get over it, that I've got to accept it? Really?
So what was so perplexing about that clip when we first watched it during the runoff time was if you don't like the gay marriage and you don't like abortion, why exactly are you supporting Warnock, who is pushing all that stuff? Because that seems to really upset you. And you gotta vote for the other team if those things are important, but people are so tribal that they'll continue to vote for one party over and over and over and over again, and nothing will change. They'll keep pushing that extreme stuff because you're not going to punish them about it. If you don't show them that you're willing to leave them, why do they have to change? So as long as they feel like they have certain constituents who are locked up, maybe you can feed them a goodie here, goodie there, they can push the social stuff all day long. But but you guys all saw him, right? You guys all saw he's not white. You guys all saw he's not a white evangelical. You guys know that I'm not a white evangelical. I'm a black person. So it was just a wild statement there from Dan. And it's interesting because, his Twitter is quite wild. Because his lens of the world really peeks through so many different instances that you can find, I think, with Twitter and other stuff, where people, I don't know, think that he's so on TikTok, his fans feel that he's just so by the book and by the data. It's like, no, he has biases. He's pro-choice. He's pro gay marriage. He's anti-death penalty, and he can make well, he does make biblical arguments against those things. Well, I don't know about the death penalty. I haven't seen a video of him regarding the death penalty. I don't know how you could make one really against it, but I haven't seen any content on that from him. But FYI, if you've seen any of Dan's content about abortion, he usually will bring up Exodus 21, 22 through 25. And Mike Winger also has not a separate video, but in his abortion commentary, he does answer a question about that, and he dives into that pretty deeply. So that's a good video to check out there. So you guys didn't know? Oh my gosh, she's black. Yes, haha. Yes, I am. But please stop. I just wish people would stop doing this with you name like normal things that a lot of people agree with, but you want it to be a white thing that people do. Because if you can say it's a white thing, it's a bad thing, it's a privileged position, etc., blah, blah, blah. And I'm not going to go through this today, but I've mentioned it many times. But if you have not seen it, I'll just mention it. Maybe I'll just pop up the picture really quick. There's a infographic about whiteness in America. And I urge you guys to just Google it and read it on your own time, because it is a truly racist document. The African American History Museum, the 4-level one by the Smithsonian, that's in DC, ended up putting it out. And they're just kind of normal things that they equate to being white, to whiteness in America, the identity of whiteness. And they don't say that only if you have those positions, then you are white, obviously, but they say that you've been impacted by whiteness. So if you believe in that in the law that intent should matter, then that's something that is a product of whiteness. So it's wild. It's really crazy. Again, go ahead and look that up on your own time. But they keep doing this because they want to associate these normal sort of things. I mean, it's more like really a communist sort of document, I think. But with being white, and being white is bad. And if white is bad and all these things are associated with whiteness, then you have to disregard being on time and planning for the future and all sorts of different things. So go look it up. But again, please just, stop it. Stop it. Plenty of Black people, especially on the gay marriage and traditional family stuff. Maybe the abortion thing is more controversial, but many Black people, even though it's just disproportionately the Black community that goes and has the abortions, many Black people aren't too fond of that either. So it's a contentious issue in the United States. It's not just a white man sort of issue. Though there are people who, think apparently women are only pro-life if their husbands made them be that way. So misogyny. Anyway, let's move on. So Bill Maher, the other day on his show, the Arizona Supreme Court ruling came up, and the position that Republicans like Trump and Carrie Lake are taking came up. And I really wish there was someone else on the panel to talk about this issue and kind of interrupt them and challenge them, because at one point they called the laws, the Supreme Court ruling, draconian, and so it allows for the exception of like when the mother's life is in danger, but otherwise it's a ban. And if I was there, I would have been like, can you explain why it's draconian? Like, can you explain? Because people will say things like it's common sense. Even Trump tweeted out like, use your common sense. Like, why is it common sense to allow the killing of these preborn children? Like, you have to explain it to me. Yes, please explain it to me. Break it down. How do you think they're not human? Do you think they're not alive? Why do you think they're less of a person than someone else? Uh, don't you think that you were the same individual in the womb? Like, no one swapped you out at any point of time. Like, please just break it down and explain it. If we just ask people to explain it, to explain their position, and not just allow them to throw around phrases and words like it's so matter of fact that it's bad, or it's so matter of fact that it's draconian. Like, please explain it. I wish I could have been there to make Pierce explain his position. But anyway, Bill had an interesting opinion on this, which I think I've heard him say this before, but their reaction to Bill was pretty interesting. And I actually went on Max, which is HBO. They just call it Max now, to watch that segment because there's these clips going around. But I wanted to know what was like the full kind of conversation about it, because a lot of the clips cut off after Bill was like, "Well, it's your position too." So anyway, let's go ahead and watch it.
Europe, for example, by comparison, the 60 countries of Europe. Actually, there are many countries in Europe where it's completely illegal to have an abortion. Poland, Malta, places like Andorra, so, and if you look at Germany and France and countries like that, it can be 10, 12 weeks is the term limit that you're allowed to have an abortion legally. So America is not such an outlier. If it does go to the States, I think a lot of Americans on the left do think that this is somehow a really unique American problem, or an issue that only pertains to them in terms of the legality of abortions. Actually, comparative to Europe, it's not massively dissimilar.
But the thing that's crazy is at a time when America is facing so many huge geopolitical threats, where there's a huge tech revolution going on, where the economy is faced with all kinds of challenges, the idea that you're fighting an election around this issue seems to be, just strange. Back to the 19th century.
Well, not if you believe it's murder. That's why I don't understand the 15-week thing. Or the Trump's plan is, let's leave it to the states. You mean, so killing babies is okay in some states? Like, I can respect the absolutist position. I really can. I scold the left on when they say, oh, you know what? They just hate women. People who aren't pro-life, pro-choice, they don't hate women. They just made that up. They think it's murder. And it kind of is. I'm just okay with that. I am. I mean, there's 8 billion people in the world. I'm sorry, we won't miss you. That's my position on it. What?
That's quite harsh, Bill.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not
Is
sure
that not your position if you're pro-choice?
Isn't that mainly because you don't like children? I mean,
Yeah,
No,
exactly.
I mean, but if you said you're pro-choice. That's your position too.
So he didn't really have much of a reaction besides Bill has a point. And so they're like, it's so strange talking about it. It's going like so 19th century, whatever. It is kind of strange that we're talking about it so much because there are so many things going on. And so the fact that the Democrats want to make it such a big issue, and that it is such a high priority. If you watch Biden's State of the Union address, which was terrible, by the way, that was a main focus. Abortion. Front and center. Early on mentioned, and you're waiting like, when are you going to get to the border, bro? It's abortion. You can't feed your kids, but you can kill them. You can't protect your kids, but you can kill them. Your kids can't read, but you can kill them. That's if they want to talk about abortion, that's how we should frame their obsession with it. That because the pro-choice people, they'll claim that, oh, it's so important to kids who are here, as opposed to they're not really here if they're in the womb. Some kind of bizarre, I don't know, thinking about it. Okay, then your focus should be on the kids who are here instead of the ones that you want to kill in the future. And if you're suddenly a single issue voter on abortion, and you're not going to vote for Trump, like that's maybe you would have voted for him, but you can't vote for Trump over this, even though he's really squishy on the issue now. And it's not foreign policy that's going to get you. It's not the economy that's going to get you. The thing that's going to keep you voting Democrat is abortion. You live a privileged life. Somebody I know, name is Wayne Bradley. During the midterms, he was on a panel, and this is what he told the women. He's like, if this is the thing that you are going to that's going to drive you out to the polls, and you're going to vote Democrat based on this, despite all the lockdown stuff, the economy, the schools being shut down, if what is going to drive you out to the polls to vote Democrat is abortion, and you're not concerned about all the other things going on in the world enough to vote for somebody else, you are an extreme person of privilege. Now, Bill here, at least he said to Pearson, this other woman, I'm not sure what her name is, but he said it's not backwards or anything. They think it's murder. They think it's, and it is. It kind of is. And he's very right. I guess people get upset about that word. Well, it's legal, sure. It's a homicide, or maybe you don't consider it a homicide because you don't think it's someone, or you don't think it's a person. But I don't feel comfortable with you making that call, because you get to pick and choose which humans qualify for personhood. That's how slavery and things like that happen. So if it was up to me, and hopefully up to everyone else, I would appreciate it if we just gave humans human rights when their human life begins. That sounds like it's consistent and pretty fair. But Bill makes a really good point after he kind of put them in their place a bit. Like, no, what they say makes sense about them being upset with it and fighting for this if it's murder, and it is. But on the other hand, it doesn't make sense when there are the compromises. So Trump didn't end up pushing for a 15-week national ban, which Lindsey Graham wanted and some other people wanted. Even Mike Pence, on the debate stage said he wanted a 15 weeks. And I thought that was pretty interesting. But if you're willing to go for 15 weeks, like 95% of the abortions have taken place by then. So if it's a human and it's alive, it doesn't magically become one of 15 weeks. So what's with the 15 weeks? What's with the 15 weeks? And it would only make sense to do that nationally if it's barred abortion past 15 weeks everywhere, but still gave states the ability to outlaw it sooner, which there's no reason for Democrats to go along with that. That deal was never going to happen. Never going to happen. Never going to happen. They would it would only make sense to them if it allowed abortion everywhere up to 15 weeks. And that would be a bad deal for pro-lifers. But in this case with Arizona, with them wanting to, Trump and Carrie Lake saying, hey, we need to change the law right now, even before they have anything on the ballot. We need to change it immediately. She's even like calling up legislators and pressuring them, saying you need to change something now to allow for the exceptions of rape and incest. And it already has life of the mother. But if it is a baby, and it is a baby, you're saying we need to discriminate against this kind of baby and allow them to be violently killed. That doesn't make sense from a pro-life position. And it's just really inconsistent. If your ethic is rooted in you have a right to life, it undercuts it by saying we need this exception here. It does. And I understand that people, I guess just for some folks, it just they feel like it's too mean to say you can't kill that person. But I always ask a couple questions when dealing with this issue, and we don't have nearly enough nuance to deal with it maturely. So one, would the abortion undo what happened? No, it will not. Two, will the abortion undo the trauma? That's not how you treat that kind of trauma. You use different other sort of mental health treatments and techniques. Warren Hearn is a very famous abortionist. He's like, you don't treat a rape with an abortion. Well, he'll do the abortion, don't get me wrong, but that's that you need some other kind of medical care in those types of situations. And then there's the issue that we give more consideration and rights to the rapist than we do to the actual child, because they'll have due process. They'll have to be judged by a jury of their peers, and they won't get the death penalty for what they've done. So, and then there's a question of, is adoption an option? And I'm missing another question that I typically ask with this stuff, but you get my drift. Women need all the support in the world, and they need justice, and they need care, and they really need people to stop treating their children as if they're a stain that needs to be removed, because it does make it incredibly hard for women who want to keep their baby when you treat their child like there's some kind of disease. So I know it's a tough issue for folks to talk about, and a lot of people don't want to talk about it with any sort of care, compassion, or nuance about it. But if you are pro-life, you have to, and you want those exceptions, you have to ask the question. You have to answer the question, because one day someone will ask you, probably, because pro-choicers are way savvier than they used to be. They may say, if it's wrong to kill babies, why is it okay to kill this baby? Why is it okay to kill this baby? Now, Bill, he brought up to Pierce, everyone's like, oh, you're so harsh, because he said it is murder. I don't care. I'm okay with it. There's a lot of people in the world, and I won't miss them. We will miss them. And the mothers and the fathers can obviously miss them. Even if at first they feel relief, they could obviously miss them. Some stories by women who aborted their children are heartbreaking. Even if they are pro-choice, they're still, heartbreaking how they, think about their children and linger about it. So someone will miss them, but Bill's position, they say it's harsh and it's pretty evil. And but technically these pro-choicers, they share his position. They just some of them, I guess, wouldn't consider it to be murder because they dehumanize the child in whatever kind of way and rationalize that they're not really a person. But he's mostly correct that that's a pro-choice position. He's just accepted the crudeness of it. Now, to argue with Bill, I think it would be kind of hard to change his mind on that, because he says he doesn't care. But just because you don't care about harm being inflicted against a stranger doesn't mean that we should base human rights off that. So I don't know if anything could make him care besides, his heart being touched by the Lord or something. But I think maybe you could have a conversation to at least get him to the point of, well, would you agree that we shouldn't base human rights on whether or not someone will miss you and care whether you're killed? That's not a good way, excuse me, to determine whether someone has rights or not. Because if there's a mass serial killer going around wiping out hobos or something, maybe their family and friends don't know where they are, and they've been largely kind of left behind by society. And let's say maybe a lot of those folks wouldn't maybe be particularly missed, but that doesn't make it right to go and take their lives in their lives. So there's bad things happen every day, all the time, and people aren't plugged into it. There's a bunch of Christians in Nigeria who were killed recently again by terrorists. And you don't see a lot of people mentioning that and talking about it. But that doesn't mean that they're not persons. Or that if you were really alerted to that, that you wouldn't care. So I think that's the only route to go. And that and just because someone might logically agree with you doesn't mean that someone's going to care enough to actually vote the way that you want them to vote. So I think Bill's position just kind of needs to be defeated, because I think most people don't want to have that sort of crudeness on the matter, because they acknowledge there's something cruel about it. He's just accepted the reality. But Pierce, he's pro-choice. He technically believes the same thing. Anyway, interesting back and forth here. So before I let you go, I want to mention the unprecedented attack that happened this weekend. Iran attacked Israel, gave enough, I guess just enough lead time, and launched far away enough that basically everything could be deterred, shot down, intercepted. Some things never even made it off the ground, or never made it to their target. And some people are like, oh, well, they just shot all that stuff hoping that they would shoot it all down. Maybe a bit. Maybe they did it to save face, to act like they were tough. But I think they probably also wanted casualties, which there was a young Arab girl who was Arab Israeli girl who was hurt. So there was someone who was hurt. I don't know if Israel is going to respond with some kind of big attack on Iran. Maybe they're just going to feel more empowered to go in and finish off in Gaza, because they are basically, Hamas is basically, a proxy for Iran. And after that, will they be able to go and hit them harder? Maybe they will. But what's interesting though is that Reuters reported that Iran informed Turkey in advance of its operation against Israel, according to a source. But Jerusalem Post and other people reported this too. But it said Iran informed Turkey in advance of its planned operation against Israel. A Turkish diplomatic source told Reuters on Sunday, adding that the U.S. conveyed to Iran via Ankara that its operation must be within certain limits. So that's weird. That's a little weird, guys. So if Iran gave the heads up to the US and was like, hey, we're gonna attack Israel, how would you feel about, like, what would you do if we did? And they're like, well, you just got to make sure that you do it within these parameters. If that's true. Um, that is so messed up. This is supposed to be our ally, and now you have the White House that's pressuring and doesn't want Israel to respond because they don't want further escalation. And fair enough, you don't want further escalation, but you embolden this sort of behavior from these terror states when you show weakness. Now Israel, they're willing to, yes, we send them aid, and they invested in the Iron Dome and other kind of stuff, which they obviously needed, and thank God they have. But they're willing to fight their battles. They're not, begging for American troops to come on the ground or something like that. But for America to keep like kneecapping Israel, and for the world to see, or Iran to see, that they're losing support, and you see these, Hamas folks or pro, Hamas people celebrating because they're like, oh, Israel's losing support. They're losing support. It's all very strange to me, the way that the US is just making making things worse for Israel. And it's very strange because if the US, not, I don't know about Biden, with Biden being in this position, but normally if there was some kind of attack on the US that was anything of the magnitude of October the 7th, that was, somewhat proportional or whatever, we would defend and we would avenge, and we would make no sort of apologies about it. And that is what's so strange to me about all this stuff. With all the firepower that they hit within Israel, trying to get at them, and for the US to be like, nope, don't retaliate. I just, I mean, we just would not bother being lectured. I mean, people lecture, sure, but we would do what we have to do. We would do what we felt that what was best in our interests, and we just wouldn't take lectures. Now, so I don't know what they're gonna do. I assume they're gonna go ahead and finish the operation in Gaza, and finish taking out Hamas and remove that chess piece from the board. And the Saudis were like, yeah, they started this drama, not Israel, but Hamas and Iran started that drama in Gaza because they wanted to ruin our relations, our relations with Israel. So once this is over in Gaza, and Israel establishes better relationships with the Saudis and they box Iran in, that'll be great. That'll be great. But it's really disheartening that the US is really standing in the way of progress, and making it, the weakness of the US is making it more dangerous for Israel. And you can say, well, we don't care about Israel if you're some kind of isolationist and stuff. What I don't understand about the America First crowd that just doesn't give a rip about the whole October 7th thing, like, Americans did die that day, though. Americans did die that day. I think there's more like fascinating things about the morality of it, and people's sort of victim mentalities and hierarchy and system of oppression, and so on. Like, people telling me, you're brown, you should support Gaza. I'm like, what? It doesn't work like that. But the fact that people feel that way, that sort of stuff is fascinating to me. And that's one reason why I talked about, I'm not, huge foreign policy buff or anything like that, but I don't understand why people aren't more concerned about the Americans that were killed or were kidnapped. I don't even know how many hostages are still alive, which Hamas said they don't want to do any sort of exchange. They keep shooting down compromises. So I don't know if they're going to reach one or not, but they can't guarantee that they can give 40 people back. Like some of them might be alive, some of them might be dead. Who knows who's alive and who's dead if they have anyone? Really? If they're like, we can give you some dead bodies. So at that point, I'm just like, finish the mission. Do what's best for your people. Just do what's best for your people. Because if you don't, you're just gonna be in a world of hurt next time. But I don't know what's gonna happen in the U.S. with the foreign policy. I don't know how much it's gonna play with the election, especially as Trump's first trial has started, and he has to be in court. I think every day for the duration of his New York trial, which is his trial in New York is that's currently going on right now, is the one where people know it's the most like political theater. But in the long run, we'll see if it matters, because I don't know if he's going to get a fair day in court because it's in New York. So there's a lot of people who are politically minded and they let that kind of eat their brains a bit. So we'll see if he gets a fair shake in all this. But if he is, convicted, we'll see how that ends up impacting the election. And how much that'll play versus like how bad of a job Biden is doing. But the world is, not on fire, but you can definitely see that there is no strength in the White House. And that's unfortunate, especially for our allies. And what's the point of being an ally right now? The U.S. if they're like, you can attack them this much. You can attack them this much, sure. And we'll tell them not to fight back. Yay. That's America right now. Thank you guys for joining me. Please go to blacktnews.com. Check out different content on my website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate, because it does cost to stream, run my website, all that stuff. Check out different merch that we have available at the store, like this cool Be Better Not Bitter shirt. We also got this I'm Not the Victim You're Looking For shirt, and mugs and so on. So go ahead and check that stuff out. Thank you guys, and I will see you tomorrow. Make sure you get your taxes done.